might think Kovu and Scar do not have much in common. They weren't even in the same timeline and can't possibly be related in any way, much less have any other form of relationship. But the real truth is that there is a dark connection between Kovu and Scar, and it's one that you probably missed. So the question is, what is this connection? Why was it so subtle? And did the producers of Lion King hide it on purpose? In this video, you'll learn this dark connection between these two lions, and it will absolutely break your heart. So, let's talk about Kovu. You remember him, right? The dark-furred, green-eyed rogue from The Lion King. 2. Simba's pride, who went from Scar's supposed successor to Simba's unexpected ally. The guy who made Kiara swoon and had us all questioning whether lions could actually be that attractive. Yeah, him. What business does he have with Scar? To answer that, let's go back to the beginning. Here's where things get even weirder. Kovu wasn't just some random cub born into the Outlands. He was chosen, specifically handpicked to be Scar's heir. But why him? If Scar had no biological connection to Kovu, why was this cub, out of all the others, selected to carry on Scar's legacy? And more importantly, what does that actually mean? Zira raised Kovu. Remember Zira? She didn't just raise Kovu to be strong. She didn't just teach him to survive. She raised him to be Scar's second coming, molding him into a perfect successor for a lion he never even met. And that's where things get really dark. Let's break it down. Take a good look at Kovu. His dark fur, his piercing green eyes, that sharp, angular face. Look familiar? Because if you put him side by side with a young Scar, the resemblance is almost too close for comfort. Now, Disney insists Kovu isn't Scar's biological son, but come on! Was that really just a coincidence? Or was there something more going on? Think about it. None of the other Outlanders look like Scar. Not Zira, not Nuka, not Vitani. And yet, here comes Kovu, the one cub chosen to continue Scar's rule, and he just so happens to have all the physical traits of a young Scar? That's a little too convenient. And let's not forget, Scar wasn't just a king to Zira. To her, he was everything. She practically worshipped him, treating his reign like a golden age and his death like a tragedy. So when Scar was gone, what did Zira do? She didn't just mourn him, she made it her mission to bring him back in some form. But how do you bring back a fallen king? You find a replacement. You shape a new version of him. You mold someone into Scar's image, whether they like it or not, and that's exactly what she did to Kovu. She even gave Kovu the exact famous Scar. Did she do that on purpose as well? Maybe he wasn't Scar's son by blood, but in every way that mattered, he was engineered to be Scar's second coming. His looks, his training, his very purpose in life. It was all dictated by a lion he never even met. And that's where things get really dark, because Scar's influence over Kovu wasn't just some abstract idea. It was a full-blown psychological imprint, one that Kovu didn't even realize was shaping his entire identity. So the question isn't just why Kovu looked so much like Scar. The real question is, was that ever his choice? Or was his entire existence just another one of Scar's shadows, lingering long after he was gone? It's time to take a closer look. Here's where things get even darker. Zira didn't just want Kovu to follow Scar's path, she wanted him to become Scar. And if you think that sounds extreme, let's take a step back and really look at Zira's obsession. Zira didn't just admire Scar, she worshipped him. To her, he wasn't just a fallen king, he was a martyr. She spoke about him like he was the only lion who had ever mattered, the rightful ruler of the Pride Lands, betrayed and destroyed by Simba. And when Scar died, Zira didn't just lose a leader, she lost her purpose. So what did she do? She made a new one. And that's where Kovu comes in. From the moment he was born, Kovu was never allowed to just be himself. He was a symbol, a vessel for Zira's revenge. Every lesson she taught him, every battle she trained him for, every twisted bedtime story about how Scar was the true king. It was all brainwashing, and it worked. Kovu grew up believing Scar had personally chosen him, that it was his destiny to overthrow Simba, that he owed it to Scar's memory to reclaim the throne. But here's the messed up part. Scar had never even met him. Kovu wasn't Scar's son. He wasn't his student. Scar had no idea Kovu even existed, and yet Scar still controlled his entire life. That's how deep Scar's shadow ran. He didn't just leave behind a ruined kingdom. He left behind followers, desperate to keep his legacy alive at any cost. Zira took a cub with no connection to Scar and forced him into the role of a reincarnated king. Kovu never got to decide who he was. His identity was chosen for him. But what happens when a lion who's been raised in Scar's image starts to see the world for himself? What happens when Kovu realizes that the life he was given was never really his? That's when the real struggle begins. Kovu was never just Scar's heir. He was Scar's victim. Think about it. Even after escaping Zira, even after rejecting Scar's teachings, Kovu still wasn't free. Why? Because Scar wasn't just a lion. He was an idea, a force that lingered long after his death, twisting lives, shaping destinies, and leaving scars that never fully healed. And Kovu? He was living proof of that. For his entire childhood, Kovu was conditioned to believe his only purpose was to serve Scar's legacy. He was trained for it, molded for it. His entire identity was built around a lion who had died before he was even born. So when he finally broke away, when he chose a different path, what was left of him? Who was Kovu without Scar? Even after joining Simba's pride, you can see him struggling with that question. He wants to be better. He tries to be better, but the weight of his past never fully disappears. The moment Simba so much as looks at him, all Kovu sees is fear, distrust, proof that no matter how much he changes, the world still sees Scar in him. And let's not forget, Scar didn't just corrupt Kovu's childhood, he corrupted his entire bloodline. The Outlanders, the Exiles, the broken remnants of Scar's reign, they were all caught in his shadow. Scar was gone, but the wounds he left behind never really healed, and that's the dark truth of it all. Scar's true power wasn't in his rule, it wasn't even in his actions, it was in his ability to poison the future long after he was dead. Kovu thought he could escape Scar's influence. He thought choosing love over vengeance would be enough to break free, but some scars never fade. Even though Kovu chose a different path, the scars of his past didn't just disappear. Sure, he stepped away from Scar's legacy, but could he ever erase it? The way Simba looked at him? The way the Pride Land saw him? The way he saw himself? Because let's be honest, Kovu wasn't just battling Simba's distrust. He wasn't just fighting Zira's control. He was fighting something much bigger. He was fighting Scar's ghost. And maybe, in the end, that's the real cursed Scar left behind. Not his rule, not his rebellion, but the way he infected everything he touched, even the lions who had never met him. Kovu survived. He found love, he changed his fate, but he will always be Scar's heir, whether he wants to be or not. What is your opinion about the invisible bond Scar and Kovu share? And was Zira right to treat her own son like this? Share your thoughts in the comments, and we will see you in the next video.